Hi, this is Corey, and I have been asked to show how I cover these composition books with Napkin. So this is going to be a super quick video, and hopefully I can walk you through this process so you don't make some of the same mistakes I did. This is a composition book, sort of, that is just chipboard based, and I put a dangle on the end. And this one is covered with a matte medium. No, it's not. It's covered with Mod Podge Shiny, a shiny glossy Mod Podge. I'll step back a second. Okay, so these are for composition books as a general rule, but it works, the concept works with other chipboard type pieces. And it's quarantine friendly, so because you only need just a few materials that you can get at Walmart or Fred Meyer or any grocery store. And actually most of us have them in our stash already. Most crafters have them. So what they end up looking like is, you know, this is obviously a spiral bound one, and again, it's finished in a gloss. And this one I did with fabric. It still works, but it's not my favorite. It's thick and it's kind of chunky, and but it works. And so you can do the exact same process using fabric if you choose, if you've got fabric you like. These are also covered in a glossy sheen, but you don't have to use gloss. I found that they all seem to work pretty much the same. And then I'll show you really quick the dangles at the end, how I ended up doing that. These are covered using napkins, Mod Podge, and then I use bookbinding cloth, but you certainly don't have to. You can use fabric or lace or duct tape or whatever you want. And then they're just, it's covered a standard composition book. These ones are really old, and I've been wanting to do this project for a long time. So there you go. I'm going to show you step by step how to do it, and hopefully I'll be able to do it really quickly. First thing you need to do is decide, get a composition book and decide what kind of napkins you want. Because the size of napkin and the type of napkin is going to make a difference. Because these napkins, these have all been peeled apart. And the way you peel apart the layers is put a piece of tape on and peel it up. Super simple. You have to look at the size and the composition and how the napkin's going to lay out. Is it going to fit your project? These are obviously really tiny. Some of them work great for longer projects like these butterflies. They go in the same direction, so that would work great for a taller book. But some don't work as well. So you have to decide for yourself what napkin you want to use, because that'll decide what size piece you can cover. And all of these decorative napkins work. I found most of the composition books are black or dark. So if I wanted to use, say, a white napkin, I had to cover it with acrylic paint first, and I'll show you how to do that. Otherwise, the black cover shows through. If you're going to use a darker color, like maybe, say, this or this, then you wouldn't necessarily have to cover it with acrylic paint. So what you need to do, this is you need a napkin. You need some parchment paper, and you can use something else if you like, but I use parchment paper because it's cheap and it's easy, and I had it in the kitchen. And you need some kind of a Mod Podge. Now, this is a satin, this is a matte, and this one's a glossy, and they all give you a little bit different looks, but they're not too terribly different. The matte is more matte, and, well, you'll see. I'll show you when I'm done here. I also tried one with a gel matte medium because I had some, and it's glue, and I thought it might work, but I didn't love the finished result, and I'll show you why there. And if you're going to paint your composition book beforehand, you need to get some acrylic paint. I just used what I had on hand. Okay, so you've got to have those. You've got to have your composition book. And you can use, sorry about that, you can use the little itty bitty size. I think these are like 25 cents at the grocery store. You can use a regular standard composition book, but I wanted to give you a heads up. So you'll see that some of these are I think 88 cents at the Walmart. Some of these are plastic, and this does not cover well at all. It doesn't stick well, and it doesn't cover well. And so if you're not wanting to cover it, then this is a great option. But if you're wanting to cover it, not such a great option. These, some of them I found have a really smooth, super smooth, like shiny surface, and some of them have a more matte finish. The ones that have a more matte finish, you don't have to do any prep work to, but you can see here on the sheen, these glossy ones, you can do what I did and make a big mistake, or, oh shoot, where did I put it? I put it somewhere so I could show you. And, oh, I know where it is. Here you go. It's on the back side of this one. See, what I did was I covered one of these black ones without doing any prep work, and you can see where the acrylic paint has just peeled up, and it comes up really easily because I didn't, it's completely dry. I did this a couple days ago, but I didn't sand this finish first, so it didn't have any teeth to bite into it. So if you're going to do this route, I highly recommend sanding it down. And what I did here, you can see on this one, I've just prepped it with a super quick coat of acrylic. But you can see here, this one I just took my emery board or my sanding file, and I filed it down real quick so that it has some teeth, something to bite into, so that the Mod Podge sticks. The acrylic will stick, and then the Mod Podge will stick. And I'll show you why that you do it in that order in just a moment. So, okay, so you've got your materials. And the first thing you're going to do is, if you're going to do a dark one, like say this, you want to put down a coat of acrylic paint. And it's super, super easy. I take a piece of that parchment paper and tuck it under the cover. And then I lay it on another piece of parchment paper. And I reuse these. Sometimes they'll peel up the parchment, but it doesn't seem to matter. Any Mod Podge, matte, glossy, or satin will work for this. All you're doing is really activating the glue. And you know what? Nope, I'm going to cover this one with acrylic first. That's what I was going to do. Start with acrylic, and I just plop it on. And you can use anything. You can use a paintbrush. You can use a credit card. You can use a distress thing. I take 2 seconds and plop it on, make sure it's somewhat smooth. And the idea is just to get decent coverage. If I need to, I can come back later and do a second coat. But you want to just get a decent coverage so that your color doesn't show through your napkin. If you want it to show through, great. If you don't want it to show through, here you go. So you get a coat on and you put it aside to dry. And it doesn't take terribly long because acrylic is quick to dry. So that's your first step. If you're going to cover it with acrylic, you cover it with acrylic. Once your acrylic is dry, you can come in and do your second step. And your second step is to put on some Mod Podge. And the reason you're putting the Mod Podge on now is because it acts like glue. Oops. Here, I'll use this matte one because it's open. It acts like, well, it is glue. And you heat activate it, and it will allow your paper, your napkin, to fit smoothly on top of your surface. That's what gives you that smooth finish. It may not be 100% perfect. I mean, there may be a little wrinkle, but for the most part. And all you do is you come in with your Mod Podge. Now this one, when I painted it, I put some washi on there because I wanted a straight line because of the spiral bound, but that's just an optional thing. So come in, and that is your second step. You literally just slap on some Mod Podge and let that Mod Podge dry. All right, the next step, once this is dry, you go on to your third step of adhering it. And you know what? I wasn't supposed to put the Mod Podge on that one, but that's okay. We'll go with plan B. I don't normally do this when it's wet, but you know what? Why not? Let's give it a shot. You get your iron out. So we're going to pretend that this is dry because I think it'll work either way, but I would highly recommend you letting it dry. I've had the best luck with that. So you get your iron out, you get your napkin, and you just iron on your napkin. This one I cut down to fit, but you certainly don't have to. And you know what? That reminds me, I was going to show y'all how to get a perfectly straight edge on your napkin if you want. So this one's still wet. It may not go on perfectly straight, but we'll try. So I lay it down in the placement that I want it. And this stuff dries super quick. In fact, you can see this is already almost dry. So I lay my napkin down where I want it. Well, you know, I didn't even lay it straight. So lay your napkin down. And if you've got bubbles or wrinkles and you don't want them in there on the finished project, just lift it up and put it down again because this is dry right now. Okay, so that is there. And then I'm just going to smooth it out with my fingers, make sure it's mostly straight. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't mind if there's a few wrinkles. Some people want it perfectly smooth, and so, you know, you might, if you want it perfectly smooth, then, you know, take those extra few seconds and smooth it on out. Okay, so I've got it laying down like this, and then I'm going to take another piece of that, can you see? Yeah. I'm going to take another piece of the parchment paper. I saved my extra sheets. I'm going to take another piece of the parchment paper and just put it on top. And this is just a wool heat mat. And I'm going to reach across and grab my iron. And it's just a regular old iron on a hot setting, cotton, linen, whatever, with no water in it. It's got to be water-free. And then literally all you do is use your iron on top of it, and it doesn't take any time at all, and iron it down. And the heat from the iron, oh, of course my iron is wearing out. Heat from the iron will reactivate that Mod Podge, and it becomes glue, and that's how you get a straight or fairly smooth surface on your cover. Sorry, my iron was cooling down, so I have to leave it on a little bit longer. When it's hot, I do this in like 30 seconds total. Okay, so it's now ironed on, and you can see when you try to tug or lift, it doesn't come up. So that is what, step 3, I think? We painted it with acrylic, we painted it with Mod Podge, and then we used the parchment paper to iron down the top. So 3rd step done. If you want a perfectly, I'm going to move the iron again, excuse me. If you want a perfectly straight edge with your napkin, if you're going to do it like I did there with a spiral bound, what I have found works really well is, like you can see right here, the edge isn't straight, or even right here, the edge isn't straight. So if you just cut it in your paper trimmer, it will give you a rough or uneven edge. It'll tear it because it's not thick enough. So what I do is I just take a piece of copy paper and fold it inside the copy paper, and then I will put it where I want it, and to make sure my edge is straight, and I'll just trim it down. And that gives me some tooth or protection. And now my napkin is perfectly straight. So if I'm wanting to butt it up against an edge, I've got a great straight line there. So just a little tip if you want to do that. Okay, so that was the 3rd step. The 4th step, once that your piece is ironed on, you grab, I can even use the same one because it's dry, you just grab your Mod Podge again and you put a coat over the top. When I do this, I'll show you. I'm going to use satin, simply because satin is right here. So I'm going to grab this Mod Podge. I like the satin finish. And I'm not neat or tidy or clean about it. I just kind of slap some on. You know what I didn't do, and I have been doing, is, I will show you. I grab a piece of the parchment, and I put it under the top layer. So if I want to protect that first layer of paper, I kind of put that in between, because like I said, I'm kind of quick and I get it a little bit messy. So put on the Mod Podge. And again, you can see I didn't take any special care. I wasn't particularly gentle or light-handed. And I go over the edge. So you can see here where the napkin goes over the edge of the booklet. I do that, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Those danglies that you saw, I use that section right there when I'm done to make those paperclip dangles. Okay, so that's your next step. Step 4, I think. And you just let that dry. Put it aside to dry. It does not take long at all. And you're ready for your next piece. All right, so that is done. When it's dry, it looks something like this. It's this one I think I used a satin on also. And I've already started to take the dried napkin off, so just so you didn't have to listen to this for any length of time. But you see it kind of dries just like this. And you can save the napkin for other projects. But what I do, and I found this to be by far easiest, you can use a sanding block or your emery board, but I just come in, and apologize for the sound if it bothers you, you just come in and you file this piece off. You just go straight down the edge. and you file that extra napkin off. It gives you a nice smooth surface. And any extra pieces of Mod Podge that you have, they get filed off at the same time. And you can go over the edge like this. And of course it's sticking because I'm showing you. And it gives you a nice, even, smooth edge. And if you've got some rough bits, like you can see right here, just come in with your nail file once it's off and smooth those over. And you'll get a really nice, clean, edged finish like this. What I do at this point, if I'm going to cover the inside, I'll cover the inside now. But if I'm not, well, even if I am going to cover the inside, I come in with a black marker, or I guess I could use brown on this particular one, but there's black under here, and the base here is black. I come in with my black pit marker, which is India ink, so it dries completely clear and you can do anything over the top of it. So if I were wanting to do, you know, an altered arts kind of junk journaling technique over the top, I could do that. But I'll come in and seal the edge of my surface with this black ink because I like the way that looks. If it's bumpy and lumpy right there, you can just take your emery board again or your sanding block and file that down. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Now, I've created a non-porous surface on the cover of my booklet. Oh, so you can see I messed it up there, but I'm going to cover that, so I don't particularly care. I've created a non-porous surface, so if I were to smear that on the top, I could come in and rub and wipe. You can see it on my finger there. I could come in and rub and wipe and it would be off. But I make sure this is dry because you'll ruin your pen tip if it's not completely dry. So I go all the way around and that kind of just finishes off the edge for me so that when I'm looking at my booklet, it kind of gives it a smooth finished edge. And so the cover's done. I would follow the exact same steps if I wanted to do that inside. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a spiral bound or just a regular old composition book. Here you can see the difference in the color. This one is covered with the matte, and it's still smooth and it's super, super sturdy. I haven't filed this one off yet and I haven't covered the inside, but you can see the difference in the cover. So this one is a matte. This one is, this particular one is a gloss. You can see the difference there as I angle it on the camera. This is a gloss. And, I know. Let's see, this one is a satin. And this is just a piece of canvas from a broken, canvas frame for all art projects. And I did the exact same process. I put some Mod Podge down and I ironed on the napkin. So this is just a napkin. And then I used heat and bond and put fabric on the inside. But I could have used napkin there as well. I just didn't, I only had one of these napkins, so I cut it down to make it fit. But you can see between the satin and the matte, there isn't really a ton of difference. There's a little bit of sheen to it, but not nearly as much as the gloss. So depending on the finish that you like. Let's see. Oh, the last thing I was going to show you. Two last things, actually. So here is one that's covered, but I haven't put the finishing edge on it. I obviously haven't covered the edges. I haven't gone over it with my pit pen. I can do that later on. The order isn't that important. But it's finished. It's finished in a satin, and it's pretty much ready to go. I could cover the spine with lace. I could cover it with a piece of fabric. I could cover it with duct tape. But my personal favorite is bookbinding tape. And I use the 3-inch bookbinding tape because I can get it on Amazon and it's really inexpensive. So literally I just kind of eyeball it, tear it, and then I come in and try to make it as straight as possible. Let's see, is this the front or is this the back? That's the front. Okay, so you can measure if you want to. I'm certainly not taking the time to measure. And I lay it down and make it mostly flat. And I come in and I start in the middle and I just roll over the edge. That's it. That's all there is to it. When they're chunky, you get sometimes when they're full, you get a crease in this spine. And then I literally just come in with a pair of scissors and trim off the edge. I'll come in with a pair of non-stick scissors if possible. And then I will trim down the edge here so that it's nice and smooth. A lot of times when I'm finishing the insides, and I'll show you on one of my other books, that's it. Okay, that's all there is to it. You can see that's a nice finished edge there. And I'll do the same thing with the bottom later on. There you go. If I were to put a dangle on this, I would punch a hole with my crocodile right here, put an eyelet in, and add my dangle. I'm going to cover the inside of this, so I'm not going to do that now, but that's, if you can do anything else, you certainly can put in an eyelet. So that is kind of what they look like, and it gives them just a fun, different appearance. If you've got some rough, rubbly edges here, you just go in with your emery board and smooth those out, and it gives it a really nice, finish. Okay, so I told you I was going to show you what I was going to do. See, to make those dangly bits, this is a piece of the napkin that you can see I've got Mod Podged. It is way easier to do the napkins when you've got Mod Podge on the dangles. No, let me try that again. It's way easier to make the paperclip dangles when you've got Mod Podge on it because it makes the napkin a little bit sturdier. It gives it a little bit of elasticity. I generally, when I use a standard size paperclip, this is just a rare old large paperclip, you know, the cheap ones from any store in America or any store anywhere. I go about 1.5 inches. I'm going to cut this down. This is 1.25 inches, but I usually cut off about, this one doesn't have any Mod Podge on it. I cut off about 1.5 inches, and I make it about 1.5 inches wide. And then, I don't know, I feel like I just, 2 inches, 3 inches long, something like that. And this one is a little bit less, so you're going to see here on this one I don't have as much overlap. I don't like that. Okay, going with plan B. I've got napkins and paper everywhere, so I'll grab a piece and show you. And of course, because I'm wanting to show you, I don't have any ready to go. Oh, here you go. Here's a piece that's been Mod Podged. So I will use this. And you can see it's just a section here, and you can see that it's been Mod Podged. So I will, because it's Mod Podged, it also cuts easier. If I just cut a regular napkin on this, it'll tear the edge. That's why I use that paper trick. And I decide, do I want purple at the edge or do I want yellow? So on this particular one, just cut it down. And again, I cut it to about 1.5 inches. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I've got my piece that I'm going to use to cover. I'll grab, I use art glitter glue simply because it's right here, but you can use any wet glue. Do I want the purple or I want the yellow bit to show. So I lay my paper clip down mostly centered, so you can see here, I've got a little bit of room here on the top and a little bit of room on the bottom. I'll put just a bit of glue, doesn't take much at all. And I'll fold it over the paper clip on the inside, and I'll hold it for just a moment or so that it gives the glue a chance to do its work. Then I literally just wrap it around the paper clip. If it gets too fat, I just trim it off. If it gets too wide, I just kind of smush it down. The napkin has that option. And I roll it, wrap around. Now, so you can see here at the edge how that edge sticks up a little bit. I'll just come in and trim that, and then I'll use the same glue, just put a tiny bit of that glue, hold it down for a moment, and I have got a paper clip that's ready to be turned into a dangle. I've got a couple more here that are done, and then I just use a jump ring or a bulb pin, and I put these on the ends of my books. So here is a completed one. Again, here is the dangle. This let's see, can you see it there? There's the eyelet with a jump ring, and then a bulb pin with just some little seed beads on it. And then here is that covered napkin paper clip, and with a little bit of a dangle at the end. And I just like the way they look. Whoops, sorry about that. I just like the way they look sitting on the shelf. On the inside of this one, I used pink because that's what I had and it matched this. It's just cardstock. And I did the exact same process. I didn't use the acrylic paint because I didn't need to. I just covered, I put Mod Podge on the inside cover. I covered it with a piece of cardstock, and then I covered the cardstock with Mod Podge again. I glued down, oh, let's see if you can see it there. I glued down some washi tape because I like the finished look, and then this is ready to go, ready to be on my shelf. I hope that helped. I hope it encourages you to give this a try. It really is pretty darn easy. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and I'll be happy to help. Bye.